Good morning. It's great to be back. To begin, in the last few years, I've had occasion to lament the loss of three people whose minds were particularly awe-inspiring. So first, in October of 2022, we mourned the passing of Dr. Carol Fisher Matheson, a longtime member of this church, an extraordinary, also scholar of music. Doc Carol, as her students called her, had a reputation that clearly preceded her, and I was never officially a student of hers, but I always marveled at how often her students spoke of her outside of class, often repeating, and I found interesting, committing to their class notes. They loved writing down her witty quips and analogies that she made while she was teaching through lively lecture. She had her own special magnetism with students. They seemed to hang on her every word and find warmth just in her presence. And if I close my own eyes, I can picture her at the podium of the closing of Culver Stockton College commencement ceremonies, singing "Hail Culver Stockton," her resonant vibrato, the perfect aural triumph to herald the accomplishment celebrated in the Hill's newest graduates. Dr. Robert Sadler ascended to flight amongst the cosmos, that's phrasing borrowed from his lovely obituary, in August of this past year. A physicist and a computer scientist, Bob's brain seemed as vast as the landscapes he traversed as a hiker, climber, and explorer. And I also didn't actually know Bob all that well, but found him so easy to talk to because he was so well read, and because he was naturally curious. And so tumbling into fulfilling conversation about space or technology or nature was inevitable and easy. He also had a cleverness about him that emerged in subtle humor, and that's one of my favorite kinds of humor and one of the hardest types to nail. You have to be really, really smart to be funny with that kind of subtlety. Sadler was well known in the area for his astronomy lectures in local parks and recreation centers, and he titled one of his final presentations in late 2021, "Venus, Earth's Hot Sister." Beyond the great minds of the Hill across the river in Canton, Dr. Sadler's passing was shortly followed by the earthly departure of my own Dr. Ethan Lewis. Dr. Lewis was one of my most favorite professors during my time as an undergraduate. Having earned his PhD from Boston College, he specialized in Shakespeare, early 17th century drama, and early 20th century modernist poetry. Both his mind and emotions were deep. Beyond the incredible capacity of his mind to interpret and command the written word, his capacity for kindness was striking. Indulge me in a brief excerpt from my alma mater's announcement for his memorial service last year. Scores of students remember his legendary syllabi full of heavy description of this semester's approach to 6 contemporary poets, Shakespeare's project, or what is good. Many students recall his standard reminder that one wipes one's behind with paper. You are writing an essay. And I will never have my students write papers, they write essays. They remember his adamant support of Strunk and White's principles of clear and effective prose. It's on my coffee table. And the strident reminder to not squander a title. They fondly recall his humane approach to commenting on papers via an authentic question about content or a comparison of their ideas to Robert Lowell's. Students didn't just like Professor Lewis's classes, they loved him. He called me kiddo, and the gentleness of his manner were the first thoughts that followed me after learning he had passed at only 59 years of age. And as these three, each renowned scholars in their own right, are beloved by students and inspired by them, we've been inspired by them across decades, I found a unique grief to contend with. So sitting on the front porch with Scott, as is a habit for us, we sifted together through lots of memories and recollections of these very important people who were colleagues and instrumental teachers to us. and we wondered how the world would keep on turning when one of its most powerful human brains had transitioned into a new realm. I remember myself finding a pretty rudimentary phrase that I can't top this morning in describing these feelings of grief. I would just say over and over again, they don't make them like that anymore. But what does my grief have to do with transformation, which is the theme of this month's messages? And I'll get to that connection after a quick and happier story. A few weekends back, my alma mater honored Dr. Karen Moransky, now Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Sonoma State University, with the UIS Distinguished Service Award following her 21 years of service to the institution, where she both taught and served as an administrator. Drawing from her bio on the SSU webpage, her proudest achievements at UIS were bringing a diverse population of first-year students to the campus and developing the Capital Scholars Honors Program. Her time at UIS helped her hone her passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she developed programs and services in collaboration with student affairs that helped eliminate equity gaps. I was lucky, very, very lucky, to be accepted into the program's second class of Capital Scholars, and will proudly proclaim that Dr. Moransky's work to gather students in a residential learning community led by teams of collaborating faculty using an interdisciplinary approach should be regarded as one of the most successful experiments in contemporary American higher education. Fellow classmates gathered from far and wide to toast Dr. Moransky's success, and the founding classes of Capital Scholars used the occasion as an informal 20-year class reunion. Graduates of the program visited from as far as New Zealand to reconnect with her and with their classmates. The experience for me, and for many of us, was a powerful one. And surprisingly so, in my case. I attended just one of these weekend celebratory events and got to catch up with classmates I had only seen through social media posts since graduation. And here's the connection to transformation that I promised earlier. My experience as a learner, in my judgment, points to the spirituality hidden within a process called self-authorship, coined by Dr. Marcia Baxter Magolda of Miami University, Ohio, in the early aughts. Self-authorship is defined as the capacity to internally define a coherent belief system and identity that coordinates engagement in mutual relationships with the larger world. More simply stated, it's the ability to know yourself, know what you know, reflect upon it, and form judgments. Dr. Baxter Magolda found that her participants, while in their 20s, were concerned with resolving 3 questions. And in Baxter Magolda's research, she found that students and those who studied contend with the phase of self-authorship in their lives, most often in their late 20s and their early 30s. And later on in her research, she scaled it to broaden out the theory to be more inclusive of what we think of as traditional-aged college students. But these 3 revolving questions are really kind of the basis, the framework of self-authorship. Moving through this phase, people will contend with intellectual or epistemological questions. How do I know? What is nature? What are limits? What is the certainty of my knowledge? Another area of focus as we author ourselves is intrapersonal. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What's my individual sense of who I am and what I believe? And the third category, interpersonal. How do I want to construct relationships with others? How do I perceive and construct relationships that are productive and healthy and positive? Interestingly enough, at the same time Baxter Magolda was forming her theory about self-authorship through the study of her own students at Miami University in 2004, I had just completed the final interdisciplinary courses as a Capital Scholar and was now moving into upper-level undergraduate coursework in English and communication. What were the names of some of those honors courses that I took in those immediate years prior? They were called Who Am I? How Do You Know? What is good? What is power? The powerful emotions brought out in this reunion point back to self-authorship and the educational environment that supported my contention with these really big, heavy, sometimes existential questions. Who am I? Who do I aspire to be in this world? What vocation connects with my purpose? Even the few days after the reunion events from a few weeks ago, I was still processing a lot of really powerful, powerful feelings. I was overwhelmed with gratitude that Moransky, whose vision for my learning gave me both space and occasion to really come to know the world and my place in it. I texted a classmate after we had both ended and come home after those events and was comforted by her disclosure. She says, "I cried the whole way home, bawled my eyes out. The nostalgia was gripping and sad and so full of intense love. I was stunned by the experience. I'm still feeling the effects today. I can't weave my feelings into something meaningful yet, but the power behind them is so profound. There was such joy in what we had and what we still are." Similar sentiments from classmates echoed via social media. Two classmates, both of them who are now married to one another, shared this remnant of their discussion following the reunion on where else? Facebook. "I miss everyone. I miss a time when community and friendships were served to me on a silver platter. No one warned me that when you become an adult, you have to work really hard to create space for these things in an overwhelming world while holding all the things together. I miss the safe space that was provided to me to continue to develop my identity while learning and living with others at the same time. I didn't fully realize how much I carry my classmates and professors through my daily life. It wasn't until I saw their faces, heard their voices, hugged them, and rehashed stories that unearthed completely forgotten memories in my brain that these people laid the groundwork to a lot of who I am." So at a time when there's a lot of emphasis on education as a product, particularly as it relates to a career or to a vocation, the spirituality in learning experiences can be pretty easily eclipsed. And in my case, the process of self-authorship was easier to take on in a structured learning environment, so parallel to its purposes. And for me, it was a privilege to learn that way. And I think that connects with the deep, resounding gratitude that I have for my education, seeing so clearly how my education has formed not just my identity and helped me to find a clear purpose and identity, but to understand the world and my place in it. It's empowering. And I'm not exactly sure how I would have come across that discovery otherwise. I realize that my experience shows the privilege that I had in accessing a high-quality public education, and that I had so many caring people who were invested in my success. And as I take in the loss of great minds and the gratitude that I feel for an experiment in higher education that went very, very right for me and for very many others, it's overwhelming to think about that, and I trace it to a spiritual place that I'm still tracing, that I'm still discovering, that I'm still thinking about. But I think while my educational experience might not be universal for all of us, I think that concept of self-authorship might be, and that there might be people that played a role in your life, in your coming to write who you are, and people who illuminated a path that showed you how you could place yourself in a world that you understand better because of them. The great minds that shape learners are humans. But as we move away from those experiences and people, there seems, in my view, a spirituality that we can trace, especially when those at the helm share their own unique humanity as a reflection point. And when I talk about these people who are so important in my lives, and for some of us in your life too, we think about their own unique expression of humanity that is really lasting with us. I fail to recall really super specific things about Dr. Lewis's lectures, but I know now that I love and understand The Tempest because of him, and I know and can connect very easily to how empowered and intelligent I was made to feel in his presence. And I think that's a good way to remember people also. In closing, I encourage you to think about how you've written yourself into being and who shaped the environment for you to contend with life's big questions. As is my case, it wasn't until I recapitulated the ways that brilliant, kind people made a space for me that I saw traces of the divine as I fumbled along and made mistakes and tested myself and then found confidence in my own vision. Thanks for hearing me out this morning, for letting me share some thoughts. I appreciate your time.